Hey guys, it's another episode of Mindset U. Jason Moreno here, aka Punchline J. Right next to me is Rances, aka Mr. Roboto, and underneath the both of us is King Moses, my baby boy, one of my longest friends ever. Today's episode, I don't even know how to describe today's episode, but I will say this: we learn things. We watch people actually turn the other cheek. It's a beautiful thing. I hope you guys listen. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on every social media platform possible. We're even going to start going on dating apps. You can find us on Hinge and all these other places. It's going to be a good time. I promise you. All right. So just, listen. Oh, don't forget VidaProject.com. Go on over. I'm uploading shit to there now. Please go fucking make it so that I'm not doing this for no reason. Help me out. Give me some purpose in life, all right? Maybe I'll start believing in God. If you guys start listening to this podcast, religious people, I will start going to church, okay? You have my word.
The question, have you ever been in a situation where two people had opposing views on a particular matter, but passionately believing their perspective was the truth?
All the fucking time with you.
Yeah, that's every meeting on a Saturday morning with you two. Is watching you two argue, and then me having to find if it's for Rances to agree with me, the win-win.
Happy medium or win-win.
the win medium or whatever, if you want to call it something else. The win-win of the situation.
What makes something more true?
But you keep trying to use the word that I'm like, no.
Who fucking cares about that word? Like, you're adding too much weight to that word. You're adding too much weight to the word, right?
But
it's just a fucking word.
Hold on. I want to get this understanding. So we're going to say that when words have a definition, they're not really definitions. We just, kind of throw that out and then say that truth means toilet and toilet means sky because
it can.
Like, can you say
we agree
you have
on
to
it,
have an agreement in order to have an understanding.
Exactly. So truth is an agreement. That's what I was trying to say.
But that's what I'm saying. It's not.
I'm saying
I
don't
itself
agree.
To be
I know.
Absolute.
So we don't agree on the fucking word. Therefore, I can use it however the fuck I want.
Do you guys see why I have to find a happy medium with these two? So you guys will understand the other podcast a lot more because of this.
Okay, can we agree on something? Can we say and I want you to open your mind, Rances, because I know you're stuck on the idea that the word truth doesn't fucking exist. But I'm saying for the people who aren't on the conscious level of 1 million, like you are, for everybody down here, right, with me, can we agree that maybe truth is a spectrum or a continuum?
No.
Okay.
You try to fundamentally change my perspective on it.
I'm not. I'm trying to have you come down and see what everybody else fucking sees.
But that's...
Okay, a decision. If someone makes a decision, is it an assumption? Is every decision an assumption?
Of course.
Okay, then. So what makes that decision more likely for success than failure, over failure?
What the person wants to achieve, their perspective on what they see success.
No, data.
Exactly. But how you interpret that data is
the
perspective.
Amount of information put behind the assumption. So
yes.
Would you argue that the more data that I have, the more accurate data that I have based on my perspective would signify a higher possibility of truth, or AKA success, or AKA better decision, or whatever the fuck I want it to mean?
I don't know what you're asking there.
Rances, if it makes you feel any better, I tuned out for what Mo said too.
This podcast is going to be really hard to sell.
I don't know, maybe because Jay's been asking for us to have this live.
I'm just happy to see for everybody.
I just know that
argue.
Because when we would do this in front of the team, right, they would all tune out. So I'm just our audience is gonna be like, they're not even gonna make it to that midpoint where we say, hey, share, like.
Hey guys,
All
if
right,
you're still
so
here,
this kind of goes into where we're talking about right now, the last question. Can a subjective truth coexist without causing conflict?
I don't know if you guys listened to your conversation just now. I don't think so.
I don't think.
I don't think so.
Okay, that's where I disagree heavily with you guys.
Oh, what a surprise! Rances disagrees heavily with something. Oh,
Here's why.
You know what? That's an absolute right there. Rances will disagree with you. That is an absolute. Rances will disagree.
Yes, he will.
And
Well,
then
here's why.
Oh
He
God,
will disagree
here we go.
only because he likes to argue.
There's truth in that.
He
I'll
likes
give you that
to
subjective
argue.
truth in that if we use your definition, Moses.
Oh, now we're using my definition. Now
Yeah,
we're
we're-
gonna fucking take my
I'm giving
definition
you
out.
a cookie here.
Oh,
Make
thanks.
you happy.
Yeah, it's easy. It's easy when you want to move the line every single time you fucking
Okay.
talk.
So this kind of proves my point. When you do this, when you just give something away in order to create that coexistence to that friendliness or whatever, it ends up making each individual more frustrated because we recognize that's what's happening. But when we argue something and we come
That's not true.
to an understanding of perspective because we agree that we have different perspectives, I think that allows us to be closer together and thus move better together.
So you're saying we should agree to disagree?
Absolutely.
Good then. I could do
Isn't
that.
that a form of finding a happy medium?
Jay, define happy medium. I want to hear your definition.
Making you two stop bitching at each other. That's my happy medium.
But that's with the belief that this is bad. We need to stop this.
No, I don't think it's bad. I just want to tune back in.
You just want to what?
I just want to tune back in. I just want to
Yeah.
get back into the conversation instead of just listening to you guys argue about the same thing. And then it's great because what I noticed with you two guys is that you guys argue, right? You guys go from opposing points to then it's like, okay, now they're starting to sound like they're saying the same thing, but just a little bit differently. And now you guys just start arguing about the semantics of everything. I'm like, they're just going in a circle. They just like chasing each
At
other's
that
tail.
point, I agree with you. That's when ego gets involved.
Uh-huh.
And
know, it's just like-
I don't know, but I don't know if you guys realize this, but you two love flashing your ego dicks at each other. You guys it's just like measuring them.
Well,
every fight.
there's a. I'm gonna say this. I feel like there's a underlying like competition that Mo always wants to win against me, like as a determining factor. I won that argument like as a thing, and I react to that, and I'm like, you're gonna have to earn it. Am I wrong, Mo? You tell me.
I'm trying to think about it. I would say in the beginning, yeah. I do believe now more so that sometimes your decision making is based only on your perspective and not at hard data. So I was thinking about this yesterday. We were talking about our meeting, and you were talking about, you know, the two other parties involved in the camp, right? And their personalities and who they are. And I'm like, these are all fucking assumptions that add no value right now to what we're trying to do, right? These are all possible objections or challenges that we may encounter, which we can think about. But in my world, right, what I thought about it, so just to give context to the audience and to Jay. So we're going to give a presentation about the camp and what we were able to achieve and what we were able to do, right? My belief is that when we're making that presentation, the data that we present, the surveys, the parent testimonials, the kid testimonials, the coach testimonials, are the data that makes it conclusive to how valuable we were. And that's the only thing that matters. Yesterday in our conversation, Rances brought up great points, right? Based off his interactions, his personal interactions with these other two parties, which were very assumptive. So in my head, it's like they have value, but they don't have much value, right? Because one is the extent of his relationship with these parties versus the relationships that I have with these parties, right? So it's his perspective versus mine. But to me, it didn't matter because all that matters is what we did, what we accomplished. That's it. So that's where I say, like, I don't necessarily fight you to win. There are times, maybe once in a while, and I know it because when I'm arguing in my train of thought, I completely lose where I was going. I completely lose it. Like, I don't have a thing. And then I sense it, and you'll see a smile come out, and I'll be like, yeah, I ran into a dead end. Right? There's no more, like, data to pull out. But yesterday, I felt like that was a disagreement that we had, and I pulled out enough data to say to you, like, no, we have enough evidence to say that we provide this value, and this is how much we're worth.
So are you saying that you were able to show me information and make me adjust?
Yeah, I was able to shift you.
So if I'm able to be shifted, then how am I being arrogant with only seeing my perspective?
No, I'm saying that a lot of the times you're arguing from an assumptive standpoint. I didn't say that you're arrogant or that you're trying to win. You asked me the question if, like, I feel that I'm trying to win because of an ego. I don't feel I do that as much anymore. I would say, like, yes, maybe in the beginning. But I feel like now I try to use a lot of data or points of reference that don't belong to just me, right? That they're centralized, because I think a lot of the times these points are very kind of based on our experiences and not necessarily what happens to everybody. Like, how does data affect all three of us when it comes to this podcast versus just me? That's true data, because that data affects what we all see. And that, to me, is what makes it true for us.
So I just want to, one thing is, like, that's like the goal. And if we all agree on the goal, like for this podcast, we all agree on a goal where we're heading, the data that comes in is like, which data suggests this is how we move in that direction, which data suggests we move away from that direction. And when we have limited data, like you say, my assumptions of these characters based off of my experience, feel like, yes, limited data is suggesting this is pushing us away. So with that information, I'm going to try to steer the ship towards the direction until more information comes in, which is the point of having a discussion, an argument, whatever, is like we get to pull all of our information together and then go, oh, okay, these are the adjustments or no adjustments needs to be made, whatever.
I agree with that.
So, like, I think it's super important to go through that conflict aspect of it all.
I agree with conflict. I think it's necessary.
I don't know, I just found it a little unfair that you said that it's something along the lines of arrogance and my assumptions is the only way.
He never said arrogance.
I never said arrogant. I said assumptions. That I said.
There would, I don't
I'll
remember.
I'll tell you when I said arrogant is but the definition of the word truth and how you dismiss. That's when I said
but
it.
When you started this, you said something in the lines of like, this is where I find that you don't argue, like looking for the other. You move forward with only your perspective. That's what you said. Something along that line.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily correlate to arrogance. It's your perspective, which I think it is, and it's based off your assumptions. So, like, I was pointing the reference of, like, yesterday's we didn't argue yesterday, but we discussed it, and we had a back and forth. And a lot of it was assumptive, right? And my personal relationships with these characters, I think, have a little bit more weight than the relationships that you currently have with them, because they're longer. I have more data points in those with those relationships. So like I have a little bit more weight on my points of reference. Now, does that completely dismiss yours? No, absolutely not. There are things that I agree with. But the way that I saw it was like, it doesn't fucking matter. This is what happened. What happened is what happened in the camp. And we have the data that correlates to every party in that camp who's involved in that camp. It doesn't matter. So it's like, we have an argument. We have the strong argument already. So that was just like the point that I was trying to bring across.
Gotcha.
To say that I don't necessarily argue from an egotistical standpoint as much anymore. I try to argue from a data perspective. And if sometimes there are things that I don't necessarily agree with and I don't know why, and it makes me very passionate about things, right? And it's just like, I don't have the data why, and there's this like feeling in my chest that gets me like upset, anxious, and it's like, what are we doing? There's not enough here to convince me to move in this direction. And that's why I'll fight. And which makes it seem egotistical, but it isn't really to win. It's because I just don't have the right information. And I don't feel comfortable moving in that direction.
Yeah, I could agree with that. You used to, when you reach that point in the past, you were like, then you have to prove me. You have to prove it to me. And that used to send me off. It's like, who the fuck are you? I have to prove it to you.
He's King Mo.
I'm King Mo, yeah.
He's king. You have to prove to the king.
I'm the one sitting in the throne right now. You see these high arm rests?
I like you sitting there, by the way, because you look tiny.
It's the Game of Thrones chair. I just need to put like the swords back here.
So Jay, I want to
What's
ask
up?
you, because I feel like, again, you tune out anytime we go into like this that just happened, because I can see it in your eyes. But do you see that side of it?
Which side of what Mo
So
and
because
you were talking
that's the
about?
second half of like conflict, like this whole conversation. Like the first half was the conflict part, and the second half is this like super alignment that happens. Like, do you see that?
Well, this was like one of the first times I actually saw it come like full circle. I was like, oh man, they like came to like an agreement and nobody had to yell and like they actually just talked. So I feel like a kid who finally watched like his parents stop yelling and just have like a conversation like, oh wow, they're adults. That's what I got from this. I think, but normally when you guys argue about stuff, it goes back to like what Mo said. I feel like the arguments that come up in the L10 and stuff like that is a lot of stuff where Mo, I think Mo explained it good, that he gets anxious because he doesn't have enough data to feel comfortable going in a direction that you want to go in. And that creates this whole ruffle between you two sometimes because you guys get into this whole, you guys start butting heads, but nobody knows, you know, it gets into, oh, well, you got to prove it to me. And then you're like, well, who the fuck are you? Like, why do I have to prove anything to you kind of thing? And then it just becomes a stalemate. And this is one of the first times, I guess, in my dealings of watching you guys argue, that you guys came into alignment at the end of it.
So you're saying it's Rances' fault?
What? I didn't hear that.
I think this goes
that
back.
was
This
my
goes
ego
back
trying
to
to win now.
I think that went back to when Rances heard. What did you hear before that? You were like,
I
oh,
said he was arrogant.
oh yeah, or you heard arrogant for what Mo said.
He's like, Mo's attacking me.
Yeah.
Mo's trying to kill my ego.
No, I think it's both of you. I think you guys both are you guys both have very strong opinions, and to watch you two go at it sometimes it's fun for me, but I tune out because I'm just like, oh well, they'll figure it out. Like, I don't, what is me saying anything gonna do for the situation when I was like, they both have points, because that's what I take from it. I'm like I agree with both sides for certain parts, you know, but then what am I gonna do? Stop you guys in mid to be like, Mo has a point and Rances has a point, and I think we should just come to a happy medium. And then you get mad because I say happy medium, and you want it to be a win-win. And I'm like, well, I'm not gonna argue that. So then I'm just like, whatever you guys want to fucking do.
So, but like you saw how you just said, like Mo has a point, Rances has a point, right? They're both
Yeah.
valid. That to me, that's the essence of it. Is like, yes, they're both valid. And then like what I said before about like where are we heading, right? Which of those are closer to moving us in the direction from what we know now?
The happy
And
medium.
that's to me is like how you make decisions.
Yeah.
You know,
Finding
so
a happy
like,
medium.
I rather be moving than waiting.
By finding a happy medium. I agree.
I wanna throw something in there about like the whole CEO thing,
What thing?
leadership concept of like the direction that we're moving in based off of like who we decided is the leader.
Mm-hmm.
And when you disagree with the direction, you guys have mentioned last podcast, I think it was,
Yeah.
the last one that went live about like don't give space for it to be tested. Just decide that that's where we're going, and we'll.
Well, I think what we came down because you said that you were worried that if you were like, no, we're fucking going in this direction, that we'll start dragging our feet because we don't agree with you. And our thing was like, no, we might not agree with you, but we're not going to drag our feet because it's still something that has to get done. And then after it's done, if it doesn't work, then we could come back and be like, well, you see, this is why we didn't agree with it, kind of thing.
I agree with that. Like, going back to that point, there is a level of trust that needs to be put. Like, I know that Rances, you don't necessarily align with this line, which is like, trust me on this. And it's very few times that, you know, that I've never heard you say that, right? Like, trust me on this. This is what we should do, even though you may not be able to articulate why we should do the thing, right? I think sometimes that needs to exist, right? There's a CEO for a reason, and a CEO sees something that no one else can. And they may not necessarily in that moment be able to explain it. And I think that's okay, right? It could be intuition, which the way we see intuition is a set of data that exist in our nervous system that we don't yet understand. That's what intuition is. We've collected some fucking data that we don't understand yet, and therefore we should move in that direction. And I believe a CEO exists for that purpose.
Yeah.
And I think that needs to happen. So even though you may not articulate it, by you giving us the room to argue, doesn't give us traction. It actually delays us. Right? And I think that's important for a leader to have. I think a leader should be able to win the trust of everybody. And even though everybody may be scared and nervous and like, yo, I don't really know about this, the leader is like, no, this is what we need to do. And the leader is also aware that if they fuck up and they kill the whole fucking army or whatever it is, that they take responsibility for that shit too. And I think that's important.
I listen to all that. I agree.
The aspect of like that truth, that's the only part where like it ruffled my feathers, like that not truth, trust, I mean, where it's like, just trust me. That's where I was like, because like the just trust me is like, you don't just ask for trust, you have to earn trust. So to me is like, the way I see it as earning trust is like, all right, challenge me, and if I can get you to win my trust, it's like, okay, I'll go with you in this direction, right? I have some resistance, but I trust that you thought about it and it's a good choice. I feel like that's trust. So, but I hear you in terms of like, you know, kind of saying, hey, I got this, trust me, is really is that can only be said after you've already established trust to begin with, and you're reminding the person of trust.
But I think we could all agree when it comes to this situation, it's like, we all trust, you know, there's already trust. It's just being like, listen, you just shut up. That's is pretty much just going, just shut up. We're just going to do it.
Let's move.
Yeah. That kind of thing. So I think you should know that when it comes like, at least with this process, with how Mo's explaining it, And I agree wholeheartedly. It's like, it's not, it's more like a reminder. It's like, you trust me, bitch. Like, just shut up and we're
Yeah.
just going to go this route kind of thing, But I do think it goes back to our whole thing where like you get hung up on certain words and then that derails you kind of thing. The same way, like I'll tune out. I think your derailment is you'll harp on a small micro detail because you're anal and that derails you sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's where, like, if we wanted to increase our speed, let's talk about this podcast. We want to increase our speed on the production of this podcast and how to grow it. There has to be someone that makes decisions. And someone, like, even though they cannot prove it all the time, right? Like, there should be space for arguing data and details and all those things. But I feel that we have enough rapport and trust with each other to be able to believe in each other to make the right decision. Right? Like, I think that's important. And I think if we get caught up in the minutia, that's a new word that I learned at my new job. It's pretty cool. We get caught up in the minutia of things, then in terms of tiny details of a word, right? Like how we can argue on the word truth for a whole fucking hour and 10 minutes now. When we get caught up in those things, it actually derails us. And then not only that, but if the ego starts to come in, then you got to get over the whole ego thing. And then you got to talk about what happened and you got to resolve those emotions and those feelings. And then you come to a decision and it just takes too much time. It's just like, we have a goal. We all want the same thing. Let's just fucking get it. And we chosen a leader. The leader is you, motherfucker. So sometimes you just got to put your foot down and say, shut the fuck up. And we're doing this. This is what we're doing. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
Look at this.
There's
Look at us.
there's one thing that I think of with that is like looking at that behavior of like, all right, I need to make sure that everyone, and the word that comes up for me is the buy-in, right? Everyone has buy-in in the decision or direction. And I think it comes from like a long line of working with different people that are constantly like straying away and trying to keep regrouping those kind of attentions where I would say I haven't worked with people that are, and this goes into like, the finance and everything. We worked with, in VidaProject, we had a group of people working with us essentially for free for almost a full year, right? So there's no like captive format of like, I'm getting paid, at least, like, I don't agree, but I'm getting paid. So it always will come down to the idea of like, listen, you need to believe in what you're doing, because once you don't believe, then there's nothing here for you, And I think that's where, like, as explorers, you guys are talking, explore that need to like have everyone be on board. I think it comes from those experiences in the past.
But belief also comes in a person who just makes the decision and says, we're going in this way. Because it makes me feel more confident when somebody, even if they don't know what the fuck they're doing, right? But they cold-heartedly convince me, they inspire me to move in that direction. And I'm like, all right, like, it's better than I do. So let's just fucking do it. And I think it was one conversation one time when I first started working with you, Rances. And there was a point where, I wasn't making money and we were in the one in Englewood, this small space. And I was like, yo, I need you to be a leader. I need you to step up. You made this whole plan and I followed. And we were able to shift the business in 6 months. Because you made a decision. And you said, stick to this fucking plan. And I think that's important. I think that needs to exist in leadership. Even when you're so uncertain, you have to make believe. I think what happened with our center, when we talk about the team.
Whoa, wait. You might have to fake it till you make it.
I don't know. That's a good point. But, I mean, kind of along those lines.
So bad. He's getting so bad.
You ruffled his feathers again. This guy's such a fucking bird. But like with the team, what I think happened, what we were able to do with that team, my belief is that in the beginning, we were able to make everybody believe because we were so convinced that we were right. And then a year in, when we couldn't figure it out and we kept changing the plan and we kept pivoting, what that created was uncertainty. And that uncertainty is what broke the team apart. And that uncertainty didn't come because the plan was wrong. The uncertainty came because we didn't believe in ourselves. And the moment we didn't believe in ourselves and the moment that we didn't give a direction to the entire team, that was the moment that everything fell apart. That's like how I see it. And sometimes you just got to fucking believe. And there are just people that are going to follow you into the fucking fire. And then sometimes they won't. And that's okay. But there needs to be somebody that's going to lead everybody into the fucking fire. Mic drop.
Yeah.
Facts. Wow. I would have never thought I'd see the day. Guys, you are witnessing history right here.
What are you talking about?
Rances agreed with another point of view. This is a very special moment that I think we should document. And I'm so glad that this is being recorded right now. I would have never thought I'd see it.
How many rumbles we have recorded?
A lot.
I don't know. I'm just talking about from my eyes. From me watching you two and being around you two during this whole podcast process. This is the first time that I saw Rances go.
No,
Yeah.
Rances agrees. I say we
No,
split.
I'm sure.
We split arguments about 50-50.
I'm saying in my eyes of watching you guys argue. This is the first time I watch you guys come to a resolution in an argument.
Yeah.
Normally it just goes to the ego part and then we just get cut off at that point because we've already argued for the entire L10 kind of thing. So like this is wonderful. This is beautiful. You guys inspired me. I'm ready to walk through the fire for you guys because finally I saw your whole process. Before I was like, I just heard about your process and I was like, oh, they just fucking, they argue, and then they talk about finding this medium. Like, I never see the medium. I never see the win-win. I just see the argument part. So this is the first time for me that I'm like, holy shit.
That's
win-win.
true because we don't necessarily involve Jay in the whole the holistic approach or the whole kind of business concept. Like he's there for part of it, which is the podcast. And then you and I speak about the podcast and the other parts of the business without him, which then he never sees that. So I do agree with that.
It's
I'm
my
just
perspective.
thinking...
It's like it's my perspective truth on the whole situation.
He only has a
You know what I
piece
mean?
of the data. So
It's only a piece of the data.
His
So
truth
this
is different than our truth, Rances.
Exactly. Look at Look at this, guys.
Now,
This is called growth.
he got data, so we all have the same truth, aka
See that?
agreement, aka
Look at that.
perspective.
No AKAs. It's either this or that.
I'm just trying to ruffle a bunch of more feathers.
No,
This
but I'm just
for this
wondering,
peacock.
like, why Jay doesn't get to see the whole thing. I get what you're saying in terms of like he only gets to see like part of the conversation. The L10 that's usually something overlapping from something else, and then like goes to this point. But like have like that the whole in the L10, and when we have our meeting in the L10, like it's supposed to be the process of like to have the conflict and then find the resolution.
Yeah.
So what's happening that it's taking us so long to do that?
You guys explained the process before. It's that you guys will explain the conflict, and then you guys have opposing sides, and then it goes from having opposing sides to, okay, now we're going to get ego involved, and then you guys just start arguing just to argue, and then you guys start saying the same thing but differently. And then it's like, oh shit, it's 11:30, we got to go. And then, or somebody gets so mad that they might just leave the chat, and then I had to make a mixtape for you guys. And then... So I think that's what it's you know, it is.
So you're saying
look at it
Moses
like
is
this.
the problem.
No, you're both the fucking problem. You're both the problem. I look at it like this. You know, like how they say, like, oh, if this fight, he only lost because he only had 15 minutes to fight, kind of thing. But if there was this is unlimited time, the other guy would have won, kind of thing. Since you guys have these arguments or these conflicts in a time span, it doesn't give you guys haven't gotten to that process of slimming down the argument and finding the resolution.
That's a
That's
a very good point.
Yeah.
Your process is still super long. So for me, it's like, all right, well, it's Saturday. We all got fucking shit to do. Like, I love you guys, but like, I can't listen to you guys argue for 2 more hours until you find a point.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So
You know what I
I
mean?
would actually like Jay to introduce a trigger. Like, I think one of the things is we get too involved into the ego, but then it's like, what's the data? For me, that brings me back home. It's
For
like,
me, it'll be more what's the intention.
for me, is like, what's the data to prove your points? Right? So if you're arguing a point and I'm arguing a point and Jay goes to me, all right, each of you, what is your data point? What are your points of reference? And neither of us can bring it up. That's a dead end. It's a fucking dead end in thinking. If now we explain our points, now Jay has information to actually make a decision with too, where he can influence a decision. But for him, if we're arguing with our dicks, right? Like, it doesn't want to make
I
him
literally
involved.
just pictured you guys sword fighting. Like,
it doesn't necessarily inspire Jay to get involved.
Yeah.
It doesn't, because it's like, why? Like, I understand where Jay's coming from, where it's like, I just want to resolve it because this is stupid, right? Versus like if there were actual data points, where it's like, here are points of reference that we can go by, then that might inspire Jay to actually like, all right, no, I lean more towards this or I lean more towards that.
no, I agree. That's why, like, I found this. At first, I was like, wow, this podcast is kind of fucking boring. And now going into it, I'm like, you know what? This is fucking good. We finally found. I kind of want to cut out the whole argument about
yeah. Cut the whole
and then-
beginning part
and
shit
then-
out.
God, I'm cutting that out. But like, this was like actually kind of like profound to me. Of like, now I understand the process way more, and now it makes way more sense to me. And I agree with what Mo said. I think if we're able to come to that thing where it's like, okay, explain from the data side, blah blah blah, explain your intention, Rances, then we can come to this win-win to make you happy.
Can I say something about intention? Like, I understand where Rances is coming from. Like, what's the intention? But I think that sometimes it goes too deep. Like, I agree that I can say this. We all, when we're in a meeting for the L10, we all have the same intention. We want to improve.
Yeah.
Can we all agree on that? We want to improve.
Yeah.
And every solution or every decision that we make is to improve, right? Now, what we're trying to understand is whether this solution is the best solution to improve. So in order for that to happen, I don't necessarily believe it's so much about intention, but it's more about like, how do we know that this solution is going to move us forward? And I think that's why data on that level is more important. For me, Rances is responsible to ensure that the solution that we provide connects with the intention that we all align to. And that's the job of the CEO. That's how I see it. So to me, data is the most important thing on that level, L10 level.
There's like, I agree. For me, it's the intention is reminder of the intention. Like, this is where we're trying to head, and then it's so to me it's both. It's like the intention and the data. Make sure they add up to the same trajectory. So I'm just thinking in terms of like, in those situations, I'm just going back to like different moments and different feelings of intentions that I've gotten, where I feel like the intention is lost, where it becomes, and this is again my perspective, the intention is more about making it easier or making the workflow easier as opposed to getting to the destination. And that's when I like get really, you could talk about like the ego gets in, because I get really upset about like, oh, we don't want to do the work. The work is too hard in order to get there. Is that what we're saying? So we'd rather do this. That's where like when I question myself, I notice, oh, this is a part of resistance that tends to happen.
But
then,
you also gotta consider that it isn't that we're not necessarily here to do the work. That's not. I think that's very assumptive if that's what comes up, right? Which is fair for you to question it. But I think that goes back into the trust aspect, saying that, you know, I don't believe. First of all, no one is making money from this podcast, so we're all taking the time out of our busy lives to try to make this happen and be consistent as possible. So yes, there is a level where we want to create some type of flow and ease. So the intention isn't necessarily to not do the work. The intention is to make it more convenient so that we can be consistent. And what I've heard Jay say in the past, since he's been on a part of this, is like consistency. And I get where Jay's coming from, because consistency allows us to collect the data to understand how to pivot and shift things. Now, in order to be consistent, it needs to be easy enough for us to do so that we are on that. And you have the very difficult job of creating a balance between providing quality podcasts, right, in terms of editing and production and all of that stuff, at the same time ensuring that all of us can get the work done so that we can maintain consistency. That is the very difficult thing. I think what happens is there's an assumption that we're trying to get out of the work. I don't believe we're trying to get out of the work. What I think people are experiencing is that they're getting overwhelmed and it's difficult. And now it's just like, how do we shift that? Right. And like yesterday was a great example of like, hey guys, this is taking me 45 minutes to just do this 36-second section. This is not easier. And then that's when you came in and tried to make it easier for me, which then allows me to be more successful at my job. I think that is what what we encounter most of the times when especially when Jay's like, I think it would be easier to do this. I think it would be easier to do that. And then sometimes you have your feathers get ruffled and you want to argue.
The dad comes out in him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point right there, because that's where then I'm like, okay, I don't have enough buy-in from you to want to do this thing. There's a bit of resistance because it's like another task or whatever. So now if I can create the buy-in, then you're more likely to get it done.
But I think you're wasting more time in trying to create the buy-in, more so than like, how do I make it easier for my people to execute on this job? Right? Because I think that, like, for me, that was our approach when we talked to the team, right? A lot of the times we try to get them to buy in, but in reality, it was like, what's the obstacle? What's the challenge? Just take it away. Let's get them to do one step. Let's get them to do two steps, right? Then 3, 4, 5. Now we're stacking versus like, oh, I need to persuade and convince everybody to do this thing, which is so much harder. It's a sale to your own people.
Yeah.
That makes it so much harder. Everybody here is bought in. Like you don't have to convince anybody here. We're all here on a Sunday.
This is my sparring time, and I was like, you know what, guys, I'm gonna get there. I literally was waiting outside the gym at 7 a.m. for them to open the door. So I was like, I gotta get 2 hours in, so I can rush back here, kind of thing. Yeah. So like, I'm in, baby. Like we also described in the last podcast, I'm part daddy to this. So like, I'm here. we're here, you know. So I don't think you ever need to question that. And I think Mo makes good points. Like we're not trying to get out of work. It's just that we're just trying to make it so that we can be consistent, that we can deliver, because it sucks to not be able to deliver because of life. Life is hard enough. Then add having other jobs on top of it. So then, you know, and I understand completely where you're coming from almost all the time, where I know it's good intentions. Like, you just want the best podcast possible. But I think also at the same time is that you're such a coach, and think you're just like, you just got to do it. You just got to put in the work kind of thing. It's like, well, sometimes it works really fucking hard when I have other fucking work to do kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. I think Jay mentioned a great point there, where I'm always in the realm of coaching.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a key factor with a client. It's not me telling them what to do. That's a huge part. It can't be me telling them what to do. It's me getting their buy-in, because they're going to have to do it without me.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a transition there where I have to change my hats.
Okay.
All right.
So we just coached Rances on how to become a more effective leader.
Wow.
All right. Great job, Jay.
What a
How
happy
the
medium.
turntables.
Fun takeaway. All right. Guys, I witnessed history today. I watched these two guys who I always watch argue, and they talk about this process, and they talk about how they argue and they argue and they argue and they argue until they find their points, until they find a win-win, as some would say. And it finally happened today. I finally watched it in person. It's like a shooting star. I went in thinking, you know, what the fuck are we talking about? I actually learned something. And that's something I like to take away from every podcast. I actually learned something today. Sometimes you can make very stubborn people agree with you or see your point. And it kind of goes against my belief sometimes. It's like, fuck it, if you don't believe me, whatever. But it was beautiful to see what they talk about all the time actually come to fruition. And yeah, that's my happy takeaway. All right, guys, that was another episode of Mindset U. I hope you learned something. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, follow us on every social media platform, including Grindr. Please leave a comment. Please subscribe. Please visit the website and give us more data so these two can shut the fuck up every now and then and make my life easier. All right, love you guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Peace.